we get to start talking about homicide today. Going to talk about the different types of serial murders. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about exactly not what homicide is, but what specifies it as being serial murder, as opposed to killing spree or mass murder, things like that. Okay, and that's not those things I'll talk about, even though they're not going to be listed. I'll still talk about the serial murder. It says, the reason I say 2 is because some people in some places will go as little as 2, but typically it's actually 3. But I want to make sure you covered it. It has to be at least 2. And then they have to be separate instances. So, and with a cooling off period. So, as I alluded to earlier, there is a difference between a killing spree, mass murder, and serial killing. So, for example, what do you guys think as far as this one should be the easiest? What's mass murder? You kill a bunch of people. It could be a bunch of people. Can it be mass murder if you kill, let's say, 3 people? Yeah, in essence, that's kind of the cutoff area. So it doesn't have to be a ton, but yes, multiple people. Okay. Now, what's the difference between that and, say, what about spree killing?
Mass murder is like at the same time.
Okay. And spree killing is? It can be spread out, but it's over there's a continuation aspect of it. It's not like there's a death and then a murder and then, like we talk about here, a cooling off period of weeks or months, and another one it's more like a killing spree may cover a week or 2, but it's on a fairly regular basis, like maybe within the same day, maybe it may be within a couple of days, but either way, they're all connected, but it's a short period of time, right? So that's the biggest difference between that and serial murder, is that with serial murder or killing, there is a cooling off period, and this, like I mentioned when I was talking about rapists, murders tend to have a longer cooling off period than, say, a serial rapist, okay? And a lot of times serial rapists, depending on what type of rapist they are, they may evolve into a serial murderer, okay? Just kind of like that guy who, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because it was fun, but you guys watched that video where the criminal profiler or former profiler who was originally a forensic photographer, expert, he was talking about the guy that go around, passing the counterfeit bills, and also was raping women, so he was a serial rapist. But in some of those, he did kill the women. His wasn't necessarily because he was torturing them. He killed them because he could have been identified by them, because when he took the picture, his face or some identifying feature was in the picture. So that's what they believe the reason was he killed them. But nonetheless, you can still be a serial killer and a serial rapist altogether. But for the most part, like I said, the difference being for serial killer is a serial murderer is that is their goal, is to actually kill, not just I'm going to rape and then I say just rape. But if they're going for rape and then in the process they kill someone, that's not it. Their real goal is basically killing them. Okay. So, all right. So if we're good on that, let's go ahead and talk about the 4 types. And I'll list them here, but I'll go over them individually. So yeah, visionary, mission, hedonistic, which hedonistic has 2 different categories to talk about. And then power control. Notice there's no sadistic listed. However, a lot of sadistic can typically fall into either hedonistic or power control, but it's not its own category for how we view it, okay? But I think the one that you'll know the most about or think a lot of when you think of serial killers, it'll probably be this hedonistic side of it. So, but the first one we're going to talk about is visionary, all right? So if I say, if I'm seeing visions, what's another way of saying that? Instead of someone seeing visions, they are what? Hallucinating, right? And so that's basically what's happening here. These people are having hallucinations, auditory or visual hallucinations, brought upon them by typically schizophrenia. Okay, a lot of them will have, for example, Ed Gein. He said he was hearing voices, whether it be God speaking to him, or whether it be occasionally his mother. But either way, they were talking to him, and ultimately he said that God told him to go kill people. Okay, Even though at first he didn't kill people, eventually he said that's what he was. He also saw faces in the trees and leaves out by like in the woods where he lived. So yeah, that's an example there. Now a false, or at least a made up thing. Has anybody ever? You guys know who Dave Berkowitz is, or Son of Sam, also known as the 44 Killer, anything like that? Okay. So he tried to claim one time. He said, "Oh well, the neighbor's dog told me to do it," as though he was hallucinating that the dog was, or at least thinking the dog was talking to him. Later on, they found out that he was just saying that just to get attention and to take the anybody who was interviewing him kind of on a fun trip for him. He's like, I'm going to lie to these people and just give them a story and see if they'll believe it. And for a long time they did, and he finally said, well, that was a bunch of BS. I just made it up for fun. But true visionary killers, like I said, have hallucinations, have mental, that is part of their mental illness, is typically schizophrenia. But they hear voices, see visions, and those voices, visions, will tell them to kill certain people or certain kinds of people. Okay? So, like I said, note that part as being specific to them, but also we'll get into when we talk about mission, there has to be a difference between the two. But, so they will, like I said, it will have to be, they will think it's God, demon, Satan, someone, something else, telling them of typically they view it as a higher authority, telling them what to do. Occasionally you'll have someone who claims to have basically dissociative identity disorder. Some people call it multiple personalities. They may claim that and say that some other personality within their mind tells them to do it. Okay, that's another option for visionary, but nonetheless, they are not connected to reality. That's another area that they have. They truly out of touch with reality. So does this raise a problem whenever if we find someone, we arrest them, and after evaluation, we decide, we've already got an idea they're visionaries, but we decide they have mental health problems. Does that affect anything in terms of what we can sentence them to, for example? Does that affect anything as far as their competence to stand trial or things like that? What do you think? So make the argument, if you can, make the argument, if you're the defense attorney, make the argument the judge client shouldn't be held responsible for murdering people because they're hearing voices telling them to do it. Let's do it. Let's see. Yeah, Becky, you can try. I have faith in you.
Well, I guess you can't be mentally competent to stand trial if you're hearing voices from some other being that doesn't exist.
Okay. That could be, and fair enough, and without knowing more about your specific case, that'd be fine. But then who wants to try to combat that or who wants to offer a counter argument against that? Well, even if you do hear voices, what?
You vote for the judges.
You will be judged, yeah, okay. But what else? I mean, what else from a, if you want to say legal standpoint, what grounds can we try to prove? Can we show that, or could we try to say that, did they know the difference between right and wrong, period? Because that's, if you go back, some of you have not had substantive law, some of you have had, or something similar, you would have learned about the Manhattan rule, okay? Basically says, does someone understand the difference between right and wrong? You don't have to be intelligent, you don't have to be completely mentally competent in every aspect, but do you truly understand the difference between right and wrong? Do you understand what you were doing at the time? Okay? If they understand what they're doing, they're killing people, they also know it's wrong, but they're being told to do it, or at least there's something about them that tells them it's wrong, but they feel like, well, I'm being told to do it by, let's just say, a demon told me to do it. They still have the ability to understand that that's not the right thing to do, but even if they feel like, oh, they're being coerced to by some outside influence, okay? So that's how, does that mean they never go to mental institutions or get mental help while they're incarcerated? No, that's not what it means, but most of them still will face charges and face prison time possibly death in certain states, and depending on what the circumstances are. But that's the reason why they won't be. A lot of people say, "Oh, that means they're insane." No, there's a big difference in being insane and having a mental illness. Still understanding what right and wrong is. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to get too far off into that, but I just thought I'd bring it up. And so another thing, these kills, and this is another area that's going to be important for your presentations. I know all this is, I guess, but they like to have quick kills because they view it as something they're being told to do. So it's in essence like a job for them, right? It's not because they get a great amount of satisfaction out of it. It's not because they, even sexual gratification out of it. It's not anything like that. It's just they feel like they're being told or led to do that, right? By some outside, they view it as some outside influence. So therefore, it's going to be just a quick kill. Doesn't have to be violent. Doesn't have to be, there's nothing to it. It's simply saying, well, I was told to kill this person, or some of them have said that there were, they thought they had auras or saw auras around people that they thought they were supposed to kill. Also had people say that there was I wish I could remember his name. He said that there was supposedly a demon that he was chasing, and that demon sometimes would go into people. So he would chase, in one particular case, he chased what he thought was chasing a demon into an apartment complex, into someone's apartment, and killed the person inside the apartment complex. But he was, in his mind, he was killing that demon that he was, in essence, had been chasing. And so therefore, like I said, that was his excuse for going into that apartment building and that apartment itself and killing somebody. So it was a quick kill just because he was trying to get rid of that demon. Or whatever the case is, that's what visionary is. Questions about visionary or anything that would, about who would fit into that, anything like that? You guys make sense so far? The best we can, all right? So that's visionary. Mission is the next. Oh, by the way, the other thing, I think I still have another bullet point on here, but I will tell you that typically they are the disorganized type, right? Because this matches the disorganized asocial offender type. This says someone who's less organized, intelligence, less organized in their daily life due to mental illnesses and such. But also, if you are hearing and thinking you're, seeing things that aren't there, that sounds much more like a disorganized life as opposed to organized, right? So that's just another aspect of the visionary. So moving on from visionary to mission, because I'll try to distinguish these two, because if you want to divide them up, mission can be sometimes confused with visionary, right? So mission is different in that, okay, there's still a group, either a person or a group of people that they represent, that this person has a, quote, mission to kill them or to eradicate a group. But the difference is, it's not because they're being told by anybody or any hallucinations, whatever. It's their own. They are choosing to do that. They're conscious of their thoughts and desires to do so. They will pick certain people. Maybe it's women. Maybe it's, more specifically, if you look at Arthur Shaw Cross, maybe it's prostitutes. Okay? It could be based on profession, could be based on sex, maybe in sexual orientation. Those things have been the case in the past. But nonetheless, the biggest difference between vision and mission, or visionary and mission, is that mission comes up with their mission on their own. Right? So they're fully aware of what they're doing. That's the big key, the big difference between the two. Okay? They're fully aware of what they want to do. They know a group or a particular type of person or people that they want to go after. They may not know them individually, but they know, in essence, what they do or what they represent. Okay? So that'd be something along those lines. You'd have, they are, as I said, they're very in touch with reality. They still also want quick kills. So because it's a job, it's still a job, just like we had with the visionary. It's still a task for them to do, even though they're basically creating that own task for themselves. But it's once again, quick kills. There's no enjoyment, no sexual gratification from it. It's just eradicating a particular type of group if possible. Okay. And it doesn't have to make any sense, just maybe to that person it does. All right. they are they can be organized or disorganized. So if visionary is vast majority of visionary or disorganized, you can have some disorganized, meaning the category of disorganized asocial offenders. You can have some of them that do mission, but they are typically going to be your organized non-social offenders, because if you are playing it out well enough to know who you're going to target, and you know how you're going to go about targeting those people, and the whole process involved with that, that takes some planning and some the ability to plan. So that's what separates mission into typically an organized category. Okay. Oops. Let's see if there's anybody else. I was trying to think anybody that stands out more so as a mission, other than, I mean, it really wasn't a mission for, he wasn't purely mission, but like I said, Arthur Shawcross is similar to that, because he did have an issue with prostitutes, because he, whether or not he really thought it or not, he used that whole excuse that he thought, well, they may have given him, he thought maybe he had AIDS, plus the fact I think it reminded him of his mother too. So a couple of different things going into that. So, but I can see where he'd fit into that mission aspect of it. So. All right. So if we're good with that, now we get to move on to hedonistic. And this is the first group that we're going to talk about under hedonistic is, in essence, the lust, thrill kill type. And that's actually where most people think about when they think of serial killers. That's the kind of personality they think of, right? They think of, the prototypical Jack the Ripper. Or they think of these people like Jeffrey Dahmer, the people that will kill people, eat them, and all this other stuff, right? Kind of the crazy people, in essence, even though they're really not technically mentally ill, at least not to the extent of visionaries. But for the first group, like I said, they're going to be your lust, thrill, kill. This is actually the type, when they first started doing serial murder, like back when they first started the behavioral science unit, and even before they had that name, which now it's called behavioral analysis, but either way. When they first started it, this is the first group that they even started looking into. They didn't know about the others. This is kind of like where it started, basically. Okay, lust and thrill killer. There is, in this case, they do have a sexual gratification, but it's different. Okay, there is for the lust or thrill killer, or this type of hedonistic killer, there is a connection between personal violence and sexual gratification. So they actually get sexually aroused by the process of killing somebody. Be careful. I want to make sure you understand when I say that it is the process of killing someone. So if they can draw out that, the long, drawn out type of murdering of somebody, they're fine with that. That actually, because that prolongs their satisfaction or gratification they're receiving, right? So if you've ever heard of Andrei Chikatilo, he was from Rostov, Russia, and when he was, if you want to look back at his, starting when he was younger, he had issues, didn't have great opportunities or great experiences with having any type of relationship with the women that he was interested in, just because he was just didn't have a whole lot of success. When he was, I think, 18, he attempted to have a sexual relationship with a girl that he knew, that I think she was a few years younger. It didn't work out for him, as in he didn't function properly. And then so he had issues with that. That just played on his mind for a long time. But then when he got older, he became a teacher, and I forget what class supposedly he taught, but either way, he was in a school swimming pool, and he got excited by sometimes he would fondle some of the students, and there was a female student that he was, in essence, trying to touch in the pool, and he found out that when she would fight a little bit, or when there was just that aspect of it, he got somewhat aroused by that. So later on, beyond that, he also got married to a girl that they didn't have, they couldn't have sex because he couldn't function that way. and not to be gross, but this is how they, in order to procreate, what they ended up doing was he would typically he would masturbate, or in essence, somehow he would ejaculate, and then with his fingers he would put it in his fingers and insert it up into her vagina, and they had a kid that way. But long story short, their marriage didn't really work out. And the only way what he found out was, he started attacking people, and he found out that it's a thing called, I think it's called pickering. So it's the whole concept of anytime you have an object that, by entering an object into another person, if that excites you, other than your own, say for a man, instead of using a penis, you use an object. It could be a knife, it could be anything that you insert into another person or whatever. If that gets you sexually aroused, or if that's something that feeds into your arousal, that's in essence, I think, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's called pickering. But anyway, yeah, that whole concept of using another object to enter someone, it doesn't have to be in a sexual, it doesn't have to be in any sexual organ or anything like that. As long as it's entering their body and you get arousal by that, that's called pickering. That's what he dealt with Andrea Chikatilo. He found out when he stabbed people, he liked the sight of the blood, plus he liked the fact that his knife represented, in essence, to him, was like his penis being able to enter someone. So he would he would not really abduct, but coerce people, usually younger women, away from like a train station near Rostov, take them out into the woods, and ultimately stab them to death. But he would get aroused while stabbing them to death. He'd want them to bleed for a long time, right? Or for a while. So he's not going to stab them in areas that are going to kill them immediately, because, like I said, they're very they prefer slow kills because they want to prolong this process. So they would do that. And as he was, like I said, when I described these things, I'm not saying to be perverted or gross. That's just what it was. He would get excited, and he would he couldn't function normally for sexual purposes, but he would still sometimes, bless you, he would still sometimes ejaculate while he was stabbing and seeing his victims bleeding and dying. So yeah, that's not every single lust thrill killer, but they do get aroused by this concept of violence. Bless you. Yeah. This darn salad's causing. So, all right. But they are, because they enjoy the process of killing someone, and they like to seeing someone die. That's why they want to remain process focused, right? And they want to see what works, what is killing someone, but they enjoy the whole process. No mental illness, which is kind of crazy to think about. These people don't have, like I said, schizophrenia. They don't typically have not multiple identity, but dissociative identity disorder. They don't have, necessarily bipolar issues. They don't have anything along those lines. They may have antisocial personality disorder. That's typical among them, but it's not going to be considered a major mental illness. Okay, so yeah, antisocial personality disorder is common among serial killers, especially like hedonistic. We'll also get into power control, but either way, they will get that, and they like it when, I don't want to get too far into like what bleeds over into power control, but they do like when the victim is helpless, but the whole process. Think about this, the focus part on the lust thrill kill, they like the fact of helplessness in the sense that the victim knows that they are going to, it's that mental anguish that the victim knows they're going to die, basically. So there's a difference between torturing somebody to keep them alive, and then you are killing them, and they know that you are going to kill them, whether or not it's soon or, whether you're going to do it quickly or whether it's going to take a while. They know they're going to die, and that look and the anguish of and fear of it, that's what the hedonistic lust thrill, that's another thing they enjoy. Okay? For as messed up as that is, yes. So, any questions, comments about that? Because I did spend more time on that aspect. This is a category that a good number of serial killers will fall into. Okay? Especially if they're more aggressive. Your organized, non-social offenders tend to fall into this, or at least, like I said, not all or not vast majority, but I would say majority of them would somehow be somewhere in the hedonistic category. Even if it's not lust or thrill, you may also, this next one we're going to talk about is, yeah, like I said, they're typically organized. Okay. So the next group we're going to talk about is, I guess I forgot I had another slide of this. We'll get into comfort oriented, but I almost forgot to tell you about the other fun part about hedonistics. The lust thrill type, I should say, the lust thrill kill type. They are more likely to do some of these things here. Dismember, okay, cut up bodies, mutilate bodies, whatever the case is, because it's kind of like if you can continue the process of overkilling someone, you kill someone, then you overkill, they can still get somewhat excited about continuing to do some of that, to be like, in essence, continue the process. Even though the person's died and they get more excited in the process of killing someone, there is still that continuation of, in essence, degrading and also hurting and mutilating the body that feeds into after that. So they can still do that. They will, not all of them, but some of them, like, okay, look at dismemberment. You have Jeffrey Dahmer, who obviously didn't cut up all of his victims, but he cut up. He also tried to, cannibalize or eat part of them. He also would perform sex acts on some of his dead victims anyway, and that was kind of the next thing on here. So people like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, they would all go and do sexual things with the bodies after the person was already deceased. Whether or not they ever did anything sexual before, they could have. That's part of it. They could have done something before, but not always. But yeah, they'll go into the necrophilia. That's all necrophilia is in essence a desire for sexual gratification from something or someone that's deceased. Okay? Kind of gross in a lot of ways, but either way. And it can be, another one, Ed Kemper. He was one who sometimes he didn't sever all the heads of his victims, but if he did have to sever the head, he would use that head for sexual gratification. Don't need to probably describe how he would do some of those things, but yep, he would do that. So messed up, yes. But somehow, that's the amazing thing is somehow they do all this stuff, but yet they don't have any of the major mental illnesses that we talked about. So that just goes to show you how truly evil these people are. They enjoy torture, but it's not something they have to do. But a lot of okay. Another one under this category would be BTK, Dennis Rader with blind torture kill, taking people to the brink, like strangle them, taking them to the brink of dying, let them come back a little bit, or if they do pass out, let them regain consciousness, do it again until finally he gets either tired doing that, or else they die unintentionally. There's all that stuff. Mutilation, we already talked about. You cut the body or you eviscerate someone. Remember when Arthur Shawcross, even though I would consider him more of a visionary, actually not vision, more of a mission killer. He was talking about how he went back and opened up that, I forget the victim's name. She was the one they said was somewhat slow or whatever. They took her. He said that he turned her over and cut her from basically the throat down to the groin. But that's another way of mutilation. Okay, I already talked to you about that. They like seeing that people know they're going to die, and kind of that fear of that person knowing that their life is in his hands, for example. Okay. Questions about that? Like I said, there's a lot more information for this category than what there has been for the other two so far. We good as in understand it? Okay. Not good for having to deal with some of these people. But, all right. Next one. A little easier, quicker to understand. Comfort oriented. All right. Simply, they do it for financial gain or anything that it's typically financial. It can be any type of personal gain, I should say, right? So a lot of times it's financial, but it can be any type of gain for them. But you might have, you have, I think his first name was John Robinson, but anyway, Robinson, his last name, who would started off basically taking advantage of the elderly. For a while, he may care for them and get to where he is POA, power of attorney, and get access to their checks that would come in from the government, deposit it into an account where he still had access to that account, could withdraw money. He went from doing that to straight up just killing them and then still maintaining those checks that would be coming in, whether it be like anything from the government for those elderly individuals. He put, I think they're like 50-gallon drums that he would put them in, and eventually he got caught. But it had zero sexual gratification from it, but he was getting money from it. Anybody ever heard of Eileen Wuornos? Okay, so what do you know about Eileen Wuornos?
Well, I think she was like killed like these men that would take her. She thought that they were all going to rape her, so she killed them all.
Okay, fair enough. Even though she, ironically, granted, unfortunately she was a victim of abuse when she was younger, but she was a prostitute, for more so for like truckers and things like that. Parking lot lizards is what we typically call prostitutes that work at those types of places. But what she would do is, and this is where it's interesting, this is why she is more of a comfort oriented. So her and her girlfriend or lover, whatever, I forget what she actually referred to her as, but either way, her partner, they would actually, she would go and go to work in essence, and then whenever a guy would pick her up and they would get to a place where they were away from things. It wouldn't have to be that far away from other people, but either way, a way where there was some privacy. And about the time that the guy would think that there was, he was in a compromising position, thinking something was going to happen, she had I think it was a revolver, but it was like a 22 with her, pull it out and shoot them and then take their money. So essentially, she was doing it for robbery purposes. Granted, she killed him, so it's a little bit more than robbery, but she was doing it for financial gain. It wasn't because she later on tried to say, oh, I thought they were going to rape me, but long story short, she may have at one point in time felt that way, but definitely once her, I would forget her partner's name because I remember reading about it, but they came up with this plan of, like I said, still being prostitutes or at least posing that as such, and then once they had the guy alone in a compromising position, shoot him. Wasn't always in the head, but could be. But as long as you shot him, and then take his money or anything of value. So it was a money scheme, essentially. Okay. Another one, Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman, was a hitman for the mafia. And I think I told you guys that Professor Goldmanser was in a movie. So, yep, that's the a movie that he was in, and was an attorney in the movie. But either way, didn't have a big part. You can always look it up, ask for his autograph if you want. Yeah, he's been in a few different ones. But going back to this, as far as how it fits into comfort oriented, Richard Kuklinski, like I said, was a hitman. So did he enjoy killing people to an extent? Yes, he was a sociopath. Yeah, he was married and had kids and had that aspect of his life, but he also killed. And later on, what got him caught was I forget why he felt the need to have a helper, but he had allowed this guy to help get rid of the bodies, and the guy basically was a screw up, pretty much. And I'm not trying to say, I'm glad he got caught, so I'm not trying to say, oh, it's too bad he got caught. I'm simply saying that was the reason he got caught, was because the other guy was so poor at his job. But he would kill obviously for money, but he also just enjoyed the fact that he had no remorse when he would kill people. For example, he was asked in different interviews, because I've listened to some of his interviews, that oh, well, in essence, he would have friends and could have friends. And he said, well, were you ever supposed to go kill somebody and then you changed your mind, because you were other friends or because you just changed your mind? He goes, yeah. He said, I would talk to him and this time I'll let you off, whatever, don't worry about it. He said, then after basically besides that, as soon as the guy turned around, I changed my mind and shoot him in the head. or whatever the case was, in essence, and however he was going to kill him. But that was usually what it was, is shooting him. But yeah, so he's like, but he had no remorse. Like, yep, it was just my job, and it was just something I had to do. So, you got to kill people even if they're your friends sometimes. It's very, very to the point of, cut and dry about things. So that's it. It was John Robinson I was trying to think of. Yep, Eileen Warren-Rose. Those are all examples I could think of off the top of my head. And then, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. That's why they're killing. It has nothing to do with sexual gratification. It has no mental illness side of it. It is personal gain. That's all it is. Financial or otherwise, right? Sometimes you see these people who have, multiple spouses, like shortly after they get married, and they're together long enough for the insurance policy to kick in, and then they must have the worst luck in the world that every time they go on vacation somewhere, their spouse finds some way of dying. Yeah, if you ever meet someone like that and you're remotely interested, you might want to reconsider if they've been married like 4 times and all 4 spouses have died, randomly. So, yeah, either they have super bad luck and you just don't want to be a part of it, or else they're bad people. And so, all right. So the last group we're going to talk about today is going to be your power control. All right. So even though hedonistic has some sadistic aspects to it, so does power and control. That's why I said it's not, sadistic isn't a category of itself in and of itself, but it is. You can see it in a couple different groups. And hedonistic, like I said, for both comfort-oriented and for lust, thrill, kill are typically organized. Same thing goes with power control. Except here's one thing they do have. They do get sexual gratification, but once again, so if the hedonistic lust, thrill got sexual gratification from killing someone, the power control gets their sexual gratification from total domination of another person. Eventually, that person's going to die, but there's some differences. So, this will be up here later, like when the bullet points will, but I'm going to kind of skip ahead and tell you that. So, once again, with the hedonistic lust thrill type, they may kill with knives or something like that, which can be somewhat, it's more personal. You're there and you're causing the death. But with power control, what better way to dominate someone and to kill someone than to do it with your bare hands? So they're more likely to choke or strangle someone to death, typically strangle. But because, like I said, what better way than to get on top of someone, in essence, because that's typically the position they would be in, because that's more dominant. I mean, it's still dominant if you're behind someone, choke someone out, so be it. But it's less of a dominance factor or anything like that, or power control, than as opposed to someone being on their back, you being over them being able to see you while you're basically, either suffocating them or strangling them to death. Be it with your hands, or the worst case scenario, you're still using your hands with some type of cord or something to strangle them. But that's power control type of thing. I'm going to show you how dominant I am over you because I can just do it with my bare hands, and you're not going to stop me. So, similar to, like I said, hedonistic killers in terms of their assertive nature, and that they do get sexual gratification from it, and they are more likely to be sociopathic. So yeah, this is part of that. I mean, who wouldn't say they'd be sociopathic or even borderline? Some of them might even be psychopathic. If you can do that and not feel any emotion or empathy towards your victim at all, because, well, first of all, I don't think any of you would voluntarily want to strangle anybody. I mean, I'm just guessing. Gonna throw it out there. I'm guessing none of you are like, oh, that's a fun thing to try. Okay. I mean, I guess if you guys have your things, you have your things. But I'm guessing most of you don't want to go strangle people. But if you ever had to, like for survival purposes, you get in a self-defense where the only way you can stop someone is to do that, you will. But you're going to have empathy, or you wish you could stop the threat some other way, right? Without having to kill someone, without having to do it. Whereas they don't see it that way. They basically just see that person and see that they can't empathize with the pain or the suffering that person is having, or that fear and terror that that person is experiencing. They just see it as, I enjoy your pain, but I can't relate to what that feels like. In essence, that makes sense. Like they cannot understand or relate entirely to the emotional aspect of feeling those emotions. Okay, so they just like to dominate people and be in control. No mental illnesses, just like hedonistic don't have mental illnesses, right? They have something wrong with them. It could be brain, say it could be malfunctions, malformations. We talked about not having fear. Some people who their amygdala doesn't function properly may not experience fear. They may not experience if their prefrontal cortex doesn't develop or is damaged. They don't have that impulse control. They don't have that regulation in there that says, hey, this is a bad idea, or I can empathize with someone else. It gets muted in there. Okay. And just like hedonistic, they're process focused. So let's see if there's anything else I have on here. Yeah. So the last two that we talked about, the last two major categories, but especially hedonistic, lust, thrill, killing, and power control, process focused. The difference being the hedonistic, lust, thrill is process focused in the process of killing someone. And even though power control is killing someone, their focus is on finding ways to dominate somebody. If I can do whatever I'm going to do with you, or to you or with you, by holding you with my own hands, holding you down, or whatever, lack of better terms, manhandling somebody, that's what they're after. They're after just total domination of somebody. That's what gets them excited, total domination, that's the process that they enjoy. Okay, and that makes sense. I don't want to try to muddy the water a whole lot, but you understand the difference between the hedonistic, lust, thrill. Their gratification comes from killing, the process of killing, and the power control, their sexual gratification simply comes from pure domination of whatever way that manifests itself, whatever way that comes about.